my name is Marie Levy Pabst, and I help parents reclaim their time and energy using systems and time management strategies. So I wanted to hop on here today to talk about how do you get started on projects or ideas that you've been either avoiding or maybe just have been putting off because they're so abstract and so nebulous. So I think that it's important to note that we all have sort of things that we want to work on or things we're aware of that we want to address in our lives that we haven't done anything about, but they're still sitting in our head. They're still taking up that mental space or even that emotional space. And just some examples I've heard from myself and other folks in the Create Balance community. I know one thing that I've had circling around is thinking about anxiety in kids, and especially with my daughter, figuring out how we want to address that as parents. I've talked to folks about thinking about career shifts or career exploration or thinking about going back to grad school. They haven't done anything about it yet, but it's this idea that's sort of taking up space in their brain or potential projects. I know folks that thinking about, reconnecting with their spouse or even getting back to dating again after divorce, or they want to read more. These are all just examples of the kind of ideas for possible projects or just things we want to do in our lives that they sort of sit in our brain and they take up space. We know we want to do X, Y, or Z, but we haven't actually started yet, because often getting started is the hardest part. So I want to share a few strategies here today. If you have some ideas like that have been floating around, I want you to actually take the first step, and we'll talk about how to do that today. So if you have an idea, there's some idea that's floating around, a thing you want to explore, or something you want to learn about, or just something that you are, have been thinking about that's an idea in your head, go ahead and just write it down on a piece of paper right now, and that's what we'll work with today. All right. So the first thing to do is, if you have some kind of idea in your head, the very first step always is to get it out of your head and put it on paper. So you just did that if you wrote it down. If you haven't, do it. Because we cannot both hold ideas in our head and figure out how to address them at the same time. It's just, there's too much in our lives going on that takes too much mental space. So instead, go ahead and write down the ideas you have. And even be selective about which ones you want to address now and which ones you might address someday, later, next month, whatever it is. So step one is always to write it down. Step two is to say, okay, what is the first step to do something about this idea? So I'll take the idea of a career shift. If you're somebody who's considering, maybe you're not as happy in your current job, you want to look at maybe moving into a different position and a little like moving up a career ladder, or you want to actually do a lateral move and look at a different career altogether. Maybe you want to go back to grad school or go back to school for something. Usually the first step is not applying for a program or going to your boss and asking about job openings. The first step is usually exploratory. And this is true with almost any idea we have. The first step is exploratory, which is one of the reasons we have a hard time doing it. It's not as tangible. It's not as concrete. So what I want you to do right now is to think about this week. When can you set aside a time block to explore this idea? Let's say 30 minutes. If you can't find 30 minutes, do 20. If you can find 30 minutes and more, do 45. But pick your amount of time. Let's just say 30 minutes for the sake of example. You're going to spend 30 minutes just exploring the idea. So if the idea is a career shift, you're going to go explore what people with your skill set do besides your current job. You just can Google search it. If you, when I was thinking about this in terms of my kids and what childhood anxiety looks like, I started by just looking up what books people recommended and what blog posts were already out there. You also might think of people you want to talk to. Maybe you're exploring some ideas about enrolling your kid in a martial arts program or something like that. Actually talking to a few friends and say, hey, I know your kid does martial arts. Where do they do it? Do they like it? So again, exploratory. Promise yourself that the first step you'll take is to spend 30 minutes or some other time block just exploring, either by reading things online, checking out some books, buying some books, or checking out books from the library. Maybe you'll even go online and get 3 financial quotes for something you want to buy. Maybe you'll finally make that call to customer service about something that you weren't sure about. Maybe it's talking to people to hear their experiences. Whatever it is, dedicate a time block of 30 minutes, more or less, to exploring this idea. Because so often when we get stuck, where we get stuck is that exploratory phase. Because it's not concrete, we don't ever start. But if we don't ever start, we can't move on to the next piece. All right. And then that brings us to the last step when you're really struggling to get started with a project or idea. Once you've explored, go ahead and set up a place where you can record what you're learning or record what you're thinking about for that project. So again, just using the career shift example, if you're thinking about a career shift, but you don't even know where or how yet, open up a document, get out a piece of paper. At the top, write career shift or write career question mark. It almost doesn't matter what you name it. And then go ahead and on one side, keep a list of action steps, things you want to do that you can check off. And on the right side, keep a list of notes and ideas and things you're realizing. So if you want to go talk to Jennifer about her job in a slightly different field, put that on your action step that you're going to text or call Jennifer. And when she tells you interesting things, you can record that in the notes section. What I just asked you to set up is actually something called a project sheet. And very basically, a project sheet is simply a holding place for all of the ideas and notes and action steps you collect. So once you've done this, once you've set up this piece of paper, what you've got is a little bit more of a plan. So you've taken your nebulous idea that's just been sort of taking up abstract space in your brain. You've done the first exploratory step. You've probably learned a few things. You've done the next step of setting up a plan for it. That is what you need to get started on projects and ideas that you've been avoiding or putting off, is to just put pen to paper, set aside 30 minutes to explore, and then you start to see where it takes you. But now it's actually going to take you somewhere instead of just being stuck in a revolving circle in your brain.